So to this point in our application, we've gotten to the point where we can add a feed to our table view on our feeds view controller. We can select it, come over to it, our articles view controller, and see our articles associated with it. And now the next step is we want to be able to segue over to our web view controller and actually show the article that was selected, as well as get rid of this nasty little title up here and actually put something up there that has some meaning. So in order to do this, it's fairly straightforward, fairly simple, but there's a couple little housekeeping things we're going to have to do first. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to update some things on our web view controller so we can get programmatic access to them, which we really haven't quite done explicitly to this point. So I'm going to introduce a new topic here. So what I want to do is I'm going to give ourselves a little bit more real estate, and I'm going to close out that left pane so we're left with nothing but the storyboard. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select this 2 circles here in our assistant editor. And what this is going to do is it's going to bring up a right-hand code pane right next to our left-hand storyboard. So what this allows us to do is to select a particular view controller within our storyboard, and it's going to show the code that's associated with it. So now, since the subclass of this table view controller over here is the articles table view controller, I get that in my code view to the right. So if I come and select my web view controller, I see the same thing over here. So that is very, very nice. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to get access to this UI web view from my code so that I can point this to a particular URL and have it actually show up. And I want to be able to change this title up here as well. So we're going to do a couple very simple things here, I think, to actually get this to work. So ultimately what I want to happen, very similarly to what we've done before, is I want to select an article from this table view, and I want to pass that particular article over here to our UI web view and then update things appropriately. So in order to do that, we're going to create a very simple article here, which is going to be of type article model, and we'll just initialize it to a new article model. Fairly straightforward, but now, once I have that particular article, I want to be able to, like I said, do 2 things. I want to update this UI web view, and I want to set the title up here appropriately. So in order to do that, I need to get programmatic access to this UI web view, but how do I do that? Well, this is where we're going to introduce a new topic, and if you've never done iOS development or iPhone development before, this will be a slightly new topic, but it's fairly straightforward, and this is the concept of an outlet. So what I want to do is I want to create an outlet for this particular UI web view so that I can get programmatic access, and the way that I do that is by selecting my control, in this case my UI web view, and I'm going to control, click, and drag over to the right side where my code is, and then I'm going to let go. And this is going to pop up a little connection dialog box where I can select my type of connection. Then in this case, I want to create an outlet. I want to give this a name so I can reference it. We're just going to call this web view, and it's going to be of type UI web view, and that's our only option. And we'll leave storage to weak, and then we'll go ahead and connect it. So now, if you've done it correctly, you should see a little dark circle on the left-hand gutter over here. And if you mouse over it, it's going to highlight the actual control that it's associated with within your storyboard so you can actually see what's going on. So that's very nice. So what this will allow us to do is within this WebView controller Swift code file, I can now write some code that will make changes to this particular control. So let's go ahead and do that now. So once we get in here, I'm going to come into my view did load, and what I want to do is I want to be able to set the URL that web view is going to go to, and we do that by selecting web view. And what we want to do is we want to use the method load request. Now load request takes it an NSURL request, so we have to do a little work to get that far. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to start by creating an NSURL. So we'll say let URL, which is going to be an NSURL, and we're going to set that equal to NSURL, which is going to be the initializer that we're choosing, and we're just going to specify the version that takes in a string. And that string is going to be associated with article.link. So that's the link associated with that article that we're passing over. And this is going to, once again, create an optional, so we'll just go ahead and use an exclamation point to make sure that it's actually an NSURL. And then from that point, we can create a URL request. So we'll say request is going to be an NSURL request, and we'll set that equal to NSURL request as the initializer. And we're going to set the URL equal to URL. So now we have our request, and now we're going to come in here and we're going to pass in our request just like that. So now we're loading our request, and that should just about do it as far as loading the request. But remember, we also want to set this title up here. And the way that we're going to do that is just before we do all of this work, we're going to specify the self title is going to be equal to the article title. So we'll go ahead and save that. So now let's go ahead and build just to make sure everything is looking good, which it is. Now the only problem is we actually have to pass some data from our articles view controller via the segue over to our web view controller, which if you watched one of the previous lessons, you should be able to do quite easily. So we'll go ahead and we'll get rid of this view and we'll go back to what we were doing before. And I'm going to pull up our articles table view controller, and we're going to uncomment out our prepare for segue so we can start to add some code to it. So we'll go ahead and get rid of these comments. We're going to get a hold of our web view controller. So we're going to create a reference to a web view controller, which is going to be equal to, and we're going to grab our segue, our destination view controller, and then we're going to cast that as a web view controller. Then we need to get the selected row within the table view. So we'll say that our index path is going to be equal to self.tableview.indexPath for selected row, just like we've done before. And we're going to make sure that we get rid of that little optional and we force it to be an index path. Then we're going to get the appropriate article from our collection, from our array of articles. So we'll say articles indexPath.row. So now we have the correct article. Now all we have to do is go into our web view controller and set the article equal to article. So we'll go ahead and save. Once again, we'll build just to make sure everything succeeds. And now we'll go ahead and try to run our application. And if everything has been done correctly, we should see a nice little transition once again. So now we see news and updates for Apple Developer, select our feed, and now we can scroll through our list here and we'll say the hour of code 2014. And you'll see our title up here has been updated and the request has gone out. And once it finishes, it will come back and we can see the actual article that was retrieved from that particular URL. And we can do this all over the place for all the different new Swift development courses are available, and we can go ahead and read through this. So now we have a very, very nice UI that's going to allow us to do a number of things, namely add in a feed, look at the articles, and then ultimately read the article whenever we want. So that's pretty nice. So it's a pretty nice little feature we have there. Now I'm sure to this point you're wondering, well, this is all fine and dandy, but what I really want to be able to do is add some functionality and actually add multiple feeds and not be locked into this one that we have to keep hard coding. And I want to be able to add more with this little plus button. And that's exactly the direction that we're going to go in the next lesson.